and they're getting closer together. Hey everyone, welcome to Princess of Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with episode 6 of Carol and the End of the World. We're into the second half of the season, and I'm very interested to see how this continues to go, because the first half of the season, episode 5, ended with the distraction kind of coming together. Not all of them, but a good amount of people started to open up and, actually talk to each other, actually become acquaintances outside of just, working together. They actually, had it become less about being a distraction and more about being something that they could actually enjoy and look forward to because of the company of others. And it sucks that it had to happen during such a sad moment, during such sad circumstances with the death of a coworker and all. But the fact is, it still happened. And Carol is, behind it all. She's the one who brought this community together just by, showing interest. By showing that she, was actually going to care about them. Because these were people who really didn't have anything to look forward to, who were using, again, this job as a distraction, using it as a way to just kind of ignore the fact that they're all dying. And that is now the second history of the entire world, I guess, reference I have made in this video. For those who didn't understand the cold open for this one. But yeah, it's one of those scenarios where I really feel that this this show is like working towards stuff. It's actively like progressing the storyline while giving us new stuff to think about, and doing so in an actually mature way that just really impresses me. And I really want to see more of things like this from adult animation rather than stuff like Family Guy or Rick and Morty or American Dad. I want to see stuff that's actually mature, not that is just crass and over the top ridiculous. And don't get me wrong, sometimes that kind of stuff can be good if it's done well, if there's an actual point to it and everything. But most of the time it's not. Most of those examples and shows like them are pretty bad because they rely on that immature cringe humor. And it's like, okay, I might get one or two chuckles out of you every now and again, but it's not really funny. Like Family Guy, for example, pretty much lives on the in-universe referencing. You know how it's like almost every other line is them saying, it reminds me of this from this movie or from this show or from this thing. And it does this cutaway to an animated portion that's like a joke based on that. Like they'll do a joke on Pride and Prejudice or a joke on Titanic. And it's like every other line is a cutaway in that show because they don't have any actual jokes to make. Cutaways are not jokes. It's, we're going to reference something, make fun of it, and expect you to laugh. It's not a joke. And it's like, so many of these shows like that rely on that. I mean, so much to the point that, like, the same people basically make, like, half of them, it seems. And it's just, it's ridiculous. And there are shows that can do crass humor, swearing, sexual humor, etc. very well. Look at Hazbin Hotel and Hell of a Boss. Both of those are adult animated series that feature a lot of that kind of humor. But that humor is also balanced out with actual great storytelling, phenomenal characters who are actually likable, and on top of that, there's also actual jokes in it and actual good humor to balance it out as well. The more crass humor is usually just thrown in because the shows take place in hell. And it's like, yeah, these are people who would say that kind of thing. So it's like, it's also contextually logical for that to even be in there. And it's just like, that's how you can handle that kind of thing a lot better. It is possible to do. It's just rarely the case. So, I really applaud this show. I really praise it for being as actually mature as it is. And the only thing is, I don't think this is going to really influence a lot because the show's too unknown. It's too, like, little heard of. Poor wording, but you know what I mean. Too few people have heard of it because it's a Netflix series. It didn't get any advertising. Unless it's like Stranger Things. Netflix doesn't advertise their shows. They're actually, no streaming service really does. The advertising for streaming shows is shit. It is absolute dog shit. Because they just assume it's like, oh, you're already probably on the service anyway. You're going to see this pop up. We don't need to advertise it to you. The algorithm will do that. And it's really fucking sad that that's the point we're at. Because it doesn't work. It's been proven that it doesn't work. So many shows have like been fucked over because they don't get enough advertising. It's really terrible. And you know how Netflix is, especially if the show doesn't get enough advertising, if the show doesn't get enough views within like the first week or so of the series airing, if it's not binged enough, basically, then they pull the plug because they consider that unsuccessful. It's like, yeah, the binge model is unsuccessful as a whole. I've ranted about that enough. I need to stop myself here. I rant about that every so often. And I'll continue to do so, just not right now. But yeah, this is a really, really good show that unfortunately probably will not, like, succeed much, or has not succeeded much at this point. And it's entirely, like, fucked up that television, quote unquote, is like this nowadays. Streaming services really were the death of the TV show, it seems. Not in terms of quality, just in terms of, you know, actually being seen by people. But enough with the discussions of how bullshit that all is. I think we're just going to get into this episode, see what it has in store, and hope for the best. Cutting in here real quick to remind you of all the awesome content we have on the channel. Between Monday and Friday, we have a plethora of awesome series reactions with 2 on Wednesday. We also have movie reactions every Saturday and Sunday. I do pre-record them during the week, but upload them on the weekend. And don't forget about all the gaming content over on the Princess of Gaming channel. We have Baldur's Gate 3 every single day, Horizon Forbidden West on Mondays and Fridays, Tuesdays and Thursdays is Life is Strange, Wednesdays and Sundays is Red Dead Redemption 2, and on Saturdays we have Nier Automata. A lot of great gaming content every day. Don't forget to click the link in the description below to follow it to today's reaction. I redirect everything just due to copyright reasons. And please subscribe to the channel and like the video if you want to see more awesome content such as this. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at today's reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. Each of these episodes has a different kind of focus, a different kind of thing it like touches on. And the big theme of this episode was loneliness. In all its different forms. And we see how it affects different people in different ways. How they handle it, what they do in the face of it, etc., etc. And it's really interesting to touch on that in a show like this, about the end of the world and everything. Because you have these characters who are literally preparing to die, literally preparing for the apocalypse. And the only thing that they can do in light of that is try to live their lives, whether they live it as a way to cope and deal with it, like Carol has and a lot of people have by going to the distraction and all, or whether they try to live it to the fullest and have the best time that they can. And we see more than just our main characters here. We see like a bunch of side characters and all going through this as well, such as Carol's parents, even that ship captain, and various other characters who appear here and there. And that kind of, from what I can gather, is the main theme overall with this entire series. And that is like with how people deal with this kind of news. And this can obviously be applied to more than just like literal end of the world scenarios. It can be applied to like, what would you do if you were diagnosed with terminal cancer? How would you handle knowing you're going to die from a disease? That you're on your last days? Like, what are you going to do to live your life? And different people will handle it different ways. Some people will become very depressed. They'll shut down. They'll get like emotionally distant. Some people will live it up, have the best time that they can, do everything that they've always wanted to, you know, bucket list stuff. It's different for every person. And we get a lot of that in this episode with the added, again, theme of loneliness. So we cover our main trio, who I would say is Carol, Donna, and Luis. But we also cover some other characters in this as well in terms of the loneliness. Let's kind of tackle each. There's kind of two main stories in this episode, but I'll cover the third one first because it's super short. You only see one scene with it. It's Luis's birthday, and he's alone. He's still in town. His family is presumably elsewhere, just like everyone's is. And he's in town and he's alone on his birthday. And with the state of the world, with the state that everything's in, like, he has to literally trade drugs just to be able to get a personalized birthday cake. just so he can celebrate, so he can have something. He gets a call from his mother, which is very nice and good, and it seems to cheer him up to a degree, but she's not there. No one is there. He's alone in his home on his birthday without anything to do, anyone to spend time with. And he's making it work. He's doing what he has to make it work. But you can tell he's really lonely. He's really like sad about it. And unlike the other storylines in this episode, that one doesn't really have any further resolution right now. I don't know if it's going to get any, but nothing ever really comes of that. It's just he's lonely, he talks to his mom on the phone, and that's it. And that's really sad. But I also like that they didn't have all the storylines, all the plot lines in this episode wrapped up neatly in a bow, because I feel it's more realistic this way. Not everything's going to work out. So then we have Donna's storyline. And honestly, this was my favorite of the episode, because it touched on a version of loneliness that is hard to portray because people don't understand it that well. It's April, and despite that, all these different holidays are being celebrated because, end of the world is coming soon. And so Donna is going to go spend a April Christmas with her family. And while there, she really starts to realize that she hadn't been there for her family a lot of the time when they were growing up. That she worked so often, so many different jobs, that she felt like she neglected her children. And it's made very clear very quickly that they never felt that was the case, that they understand why she worked so much. But throughout her entire time there, like over the, 2 days she's there, she is clearly getting more and more depressed about it. She feels like she doesn't even really know them. Like, she hasn't seen them grow up. She doesn't know certain things about them. And it's really, like, emotionally destroying her. Because she adores them, and they adore her. And to be finding out things about them in this kind of circumstance that she just never knew, it hurts her. She feels lonely despite being around people, because she realizes that she wasn't around her own family, her own children, as much as she felt like she should have been. She feels like she doesn't know them as well as she should. So, despite, having loving family who is literally right there for her, she still feels alone. And we see that on Christmas morning, they give her a book of memories of old photos from, like, their childhood and everything. And they even make it clear to her when she admits to them that she feels she should have been around more. They tell her that it's okay, and that they basically tell her, without exactly saying the words, that they never blamed her, that they understand why she worked so much, that it never bothered them. They make it clear that they adore her, and that everything that she did for them is not only appreciated, but the best present anyone could ever receive. And the reason why I liked this plotline the most is because, in a lot of ways, I resonated with it. Because I'm a very shy and timid person in real life. I tend to be very quiet around people, and I tend to have a hard time connecting with them. Obviously, not the same as Donna having a hard time connecting due to not being around a lot, but I, because of this though, tend to miss things and not know things because it's almost like I'm not paying attention, but it's more in reality it's like I'm not a talkative interactive person. Like in holidays and everything, when I see family, I don't sit around chatting with them. Most of the time I'll play a game or something because that's just how my personality is. I don't like just talking with people. I'm not super social and whatnot. If they talk to me, I'll definitely answer them. I'll talk to them as well. But like initiating conversation or just talking about like everyday life, like catching up, is stuff that I've never really enjoyed. And not just with family, but with anyone. And so it's like there's a lot of times where I'll be with my family and it's like I have no idea what's going on with them. There's so many things that I didn't know. Like I found out on I believe it was Thanksgiving that one of my cousins was like studying to be a doctor. And I had no fucking clue. I had never heard that that was a thing before. And it's because for lack of a better way to put it, because I don't pay a lot of attention to that stuff. Not out of any like disinterest or not out of like not caring, but because honestly probably because I'm autistic, but because I don't interact with people that way. And so it's just something that I accidentally just never really noticed. And this happens like all the time with friends and family and stuff. Just things I don't know. And it makes me feel lonely because I feel like it's not only just that I don't know things about them, but I don't like share things about myself even a lot of time. I share things online a lot easier because I'm not talking to people and everything. Um, it's much vastly easier for me to like type something out on Facebook or Twitter or Blue Sky than to actually talk to someone about something. Even if it's like, oh, I have a problem, it's much easier for me. And again, it might be my autism. In fact, it more than likely is. But the fact of the matter is, it does create a certain loneliness. And I don't do well with loneliness. In terms of like how like the characters in this are dealing with their loneliness and everything and how I do, when I tend to be like when I tend to feel like super lonely, when I'm like really like dragged down by that, it's almost kind of like when I'm angry or really sad, I tend to withdraw into myself. In a different way though. When I'm like super angry, I seethe. Like I'll sit there, be very, very quiet, and just like kind of rage internally. When I'm extremely sad, I shut down. I go into like flight mode, and I'll like run to my room if available, and um, basically hide in my bed and cry if I'm like really upset. But if I'm really lonely, I tend to kind of just not really shut down in the same way as like when I'm sad, but I tend to get very, like, emotional. I tend to, like, almost disassociate at times, and any little thing can set me off and just make me a blubbering mess. it's it's something that just happens at points too. Like, sometimes I'll just be randomly hit with just a wave of that, and it's like I won't know where it exactly came from. And it just depends on certain factors to when it will, like, to when it ends up hitting me. If I'm on my own for a longer period of time than normal, it can hit me then. If I'm, like, supposed to go somewhere but it ends up being canceled and I'm alone at home, that will definitely hit me. Stuff like that. And so sometimes, though, even if there are other people around me, I feel lonely because of various reasons like that, where it's just, oh, there are people here, but I'm not really feeling like I'm here. You know what I mean? It's hard to explain, I feel. So I hope you understand what I'm going for. But that's why I connected so much with that one and why I like that one the most. But Carol's was very interesting too, because Carol's was the one that featured other characters and their brands of loneliness. And there's really two notable ones in there, and I'll get to that. But Carol is alone. She, I think, is supposed to be celebrating Thanksgiving at the moment. Everybody seems to be celebrating different holidays. Because, again, end of the world coming, they have to celebrate as they can. But Carol is alone. It's a weekend. She's not working, so she's not seeing her friends and everything. And she's really depressed about it. So depressed about it that she drinks herself drunk. Very drunk. She gets smashed. Um, and fun fact for you all, I have never actually been drunk. I have never gotten drunk. I've gotten close once or twice, but I've never actually gotten all the way drunk. And it's because the first time I got close, I was, I think, 21 or 22. I was fairly new to drinking, and I got really damn close because there was a convention thing and there was a lot of alcohol, and I I had a lot of it. And I mixed just a bunch of random stuff because at the time I didn't know what went with what and all. Um but I got smashed out of my mind. For me, in terms of, like, for me, I was, like, out of it. But I say I wasn't fully drunk because I was still fully in charge of, like, my, how do I put it? I was still very conscious of who I was, where I was, what I was doing. I had full control over, my mental faculties and everything. I was just looser than normal, which for me is my equivalent of being smashed because I've never gotten past that. For me, it's like it was basically just, oh, I'm a lot more outgoing, a lot more open, and I was just having fun. I was at a convention, so it's like after getting to that point, I basically just went to the rave and was dancing and taking video and photos and stuff. Again, I would not call what I was full on drunk though. Of course, how do you even measure that? Like, if you're just tipsy or if you're drunk? For me, it's like if I still have, like, full mental faculties and I'm, like, still very much there, even if I'm a little tipsy, even if I'm a little woozy and just kind of waving a little bit, dancing, my inhibitions are being let go a little. It's like I'm not drunk unless I'm, like, out of it, out of it. You know what I mean? That's my kind of standard for it, at least. Um, Granted, I was probably over, the blood alcohol limit, so I wouldn't be able to drive, but I don't drive anyway. So, it doesn't really matter, right? Um, but yeah, I was, that was the closest I ever got. And the thing is, after that, it's like, okay, I know what my limit is now, and I know how to tell when I'm getting close to it. And I made sure that I would never do that again. So whenever I'm drinking, I handle it properly. Whether that means I balance it out with drinking water as well, or I just don't drink as much after I reach a certain point, etc., etc. I make sure to balance it out and keep myself on the up and up. So I've never even gotten that close again. There might have been like one other time where I got a bit further than I normally would, which would definitely be at one of my friends' board game parties. But again, I was still fully aware of who I was, still very aware of my mental faculties. I was not like drunk. And I'm telling you all of this to say that it's like Carol had like one bottle of wine there. I could take down that bottle of wine and be fine. And part of the reason is because I am bigger. I am a large person. um, weight and height and stuff like that. Muscle mass. Like you can actually like gain a little bit of not immunity, um, but resistance to alcohol that way. Like larger people like me tend to a lot of times not be as affected as easily and quickly. We don't get drunk as easy because of our size and stuff. And I don't know all the details on how it works, but yeah, it's really interesting in that regard. So I can tend to handle my alcohol a lot more than someone like even half my size. So it's just something I do have to be careful of. I'm not going to like destroy myself just because I can, like chug 3 bottles of sangria or something. I'm not going to do that just because I probably could. I'm going to play it safe. Unlike Carol, let's get back on topic. Carol did not play it safe. She apparently, even though pretty, she is bigger, she apparently can't handle her alcohol as well. And it's different for different people, of course. But she, like, going through that bottle of wine fucked her up. And she's suddenly visited by a kid in a Dracula costume, a vampire costume, sorry. And her reaction to it, closing the door and then opening it back up, it's like, oh, you're real. It's like, that was really funny. But she ends up trying to help him find his way around and help him find his way home. She brings him to her neighbor, Greg, I think his name was. The guy who's like painted silver or whatever. And you know what's funny? I don't know if he was in this series before. I don't know if he was shown before. But it's like he comes to the door, he's colored silver. I don't question it at all. I didn't even think to question it. The only reason I questioned the guy who came to the door and was gold at the other house was just because it was like clearly supposed to be some kind of Dinkelberg situation between the two. That's the only reason I noted that as much as I did when that happened. But yeah, so I or Carol was helping him around. Greg starts helping them around, and eventually the kid ends up running away after Carol and him push to like take him back home. And they start trying to track him down, and eventually Carol finds him in his treehouse, or a treehouse at least. And they eventually get him to go back to his house, where they realize he's been trick-or-treating, like, I guess this entire time. Like, he's been doing this ever since, I guess, all this shit started really going down, and it's been months or whatnot, right? And they also find out that his parents just fucking abandoned him. And I almost got like really mad at that point when that was revealed. But I think what stopped me from being so is, one, I saw it coming. It didn't surprise me as much because I did see it coming. And two, I was more sad than mad. Like I actually got like really sad there when that was revealed, and I'm like just really, I'm upset. I'm angry still, like angry at the parents, but I'm just so sad for the kid that it was like kind of like overwhelming my anger. Cuz it's like I don't I don't know if like this is going to come back, or if those people dancing in the woods that it just randomly showed were supposed to be his parents, two of them at least. I don't know. But I understand that all of these people are going and doing their bucket list stuff. They're going around the world doing all these fun things. I get it. End of the world is coming. You wanna live your life. Cool. But don't just fucking abandon your child. Like, this kid is like, what? Maybe 12 at absolute max. And honestly, I think he's probably under 10. But also, this kid, like, if I'm being completely honest here, and I'm saying this as someone who is autistic, this kid seems autistic as fuck. And I mean that, I mean that entirely, like, with love and with respect and everything. I'm not trying to be mean or anything. I want to make that clear. Because again, I'm autistic myself. This kid is not neurotypical. This kid is very much neurodivergent. He's his lack of good communication skills is like, oh yeah, kids just have that. But it's that combined with the way he acts, the way he responds to things. Like when Carol and him are talking in the treehouse, none of his responses made sense to what she was saying. His responses felt really off, and his actions felt off. And even like when they bring him home, it's like, oh, he just has these piles and piles of candy. He's hyper fixating. He's hyper fixating on candy and trick or treating and all. He probably has not got. He's probably not changed out of that vampire outfit since his parents left him. He is hyper fixating on this because it's comforting him. Because it makes him feel better. Because his parents fucking abandoned him. And he's probably really fucked up by that, but can't express it super well. I'm actually getting a lot angrier right now talking about this. Um, this shit, like, I talked like last episode and everything, and even a bit in the pre-thoughts here and all, about like how well like this is handled and how maturely, and I've talked about how realistic it is as well in a lot of ways. And it really bothers the shit out of me that this is to a degree realistic, that people have abandoned their kids like this. Obviously not in the same circumstances, but kids have been just left behind. I've heard stories. Like I've heard a story once. I don't remember like any other details about it, but it was literally this kind of thing. Like the parents moved and purposefully left their kid behind. Like I believe they sent the kid to school like normal, and literally moved and left while he was at school. never picked him up, never moved him to a new school, just abandoned him completely. And if I'm remembering the story right, the little bit I can remember of it, they were caught and they were like, handled because of it. Because yeah, you don't do shit like that for a number of reasons. But yeah, it's like the fact that people do shit like this is horrific. And like I would not be surprised if his parents did this not only because of the end of the world stuff and just leaving to go follow their dreams or whatever. I wouldn't be surprised if they also did it because he's autistic. And because he's like they might find him maybe annoying and felt this was like a way to get rid of him without being judged by anyone. I know how horrible that sounds and I hate that I thought of it, but I would not for a second be surprised if that ended up being like the canon truth of what happened here. Because it's like, again, I've read about literally this kind of stuff happening. And specifically with the autistic specification there too. I've heard of kids being abandoned by parents because they were autistic and their parents couldn't handle them and refused to even try or actually get them into better hands. And it's fucking horrific. It's like I understand if you don't feel like you're prepared to handle an autistic kid because you don't know what that involves, but that just means you need to learn. You need to teach yourself or find someone else who can teach you. Like, you don't just abandon the kid. You just don't do that. But we see here, not only is Carol experiencing the loneliness with, like, not having anyone to spend the weekend with and all, but you also see that so is this kid. He's experiencing loneliness and handling it in his own way as well. And even to a point, you could say that Greg and his family are. And the one guy you see walking naked along the street. And even some of these people that they stop at their house to trick or treat at and all. It's an episode that focuses on these characters being lonely and dealing with it. Whether that means helping someone else out, whether it means drinking yourself into a stupor, whether it means, dealing with your own mistakes from the past, which weren't even mistakes. That's kind of what's brilliant and beautiful about this series and about this episode. And I just really hope that we get to see Luis like get a lot of love and attention as we continue on, because it's like dude was alone and just didn't have a good ending for his birthday, and it's like I feel so bad for him. But I'm glad that the vampire kid was taken in by Greg and his family. It's like that was so satisfying and nice because they didn't have to do that. Because him and his wife had like two daughters of their own. It's like, and with the end of the world and everything happening, it's like they didn't need to do that, but they chose to because they wanted to. They saw a kid who was alone and who had nothing and no one, and they're like, we're taking him in. He is our son now. And we are going to care for him. And that's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. Like, massive props for Greg here. He was definitely an MVP for this episode. But yeah, this was another really good one. It was another really good one. It was just, it was sad. It was anger inducing. It was heartwarming. It was all of these emotions. And I just really love how it was executed and handled. So, yeah. Sorry for these long afterthoughts. I just had a lot I wanted to talk about. Plus, I kind of rambled a bit there. But tell me in the comments below, what did you think of this episode of Carol and the End of the World? And for now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.